Greetings petrolheads, welcome back to Automation, the car company tycoon game. So submissions are closed for the BGTC, the Budget GT challenge, and what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna introduce you to the reference car first, as well as also showing you the first two cars, and introduce you to the elimination system that I thought of for this challenge, because we did end up getting 20 entries. 20, that's a lot. So the other two cars will be the Beluga by Fox and also the Keika Chase, which was sent in by Boost and Ethanol. Also this gets deleted because anyway, this is the reference car. It looks pretty much like an early 90s Audi, I will readily admit that. On the front especially, but also kind of on the rear. Anyway, so this thing is a steel monocoque aluminum panel two-door coupe. It's rear-wheel drive, it's got a 5-speed manual, it's got double wishbones all around, and it's got a 3.8 liter V8 engine, naturally aspirated. Aluminium with 4 valves per cylinder, dual overhead cam, really good internals, 40 cam profile, really good mid-range torque, 250 horsepower, which was the power limit. It's got multi-point injection throttle per cylinder for a nice throttle response, revving up to 6,500 RPM. And I will explain the rule or the elimination process real quick. So this car obviously is my own reference car, so this isn't going to be considered in the elimination process. But we are going to be having 2 cars in each episode, and it's basically going to be a Motor Trend-esque head-to-head. So we're going to be looking at 2 cars, and you guys are gonna decide in the comments which one was better, and that one's gonna be making it into the finals of the week. So I'm gonna be making 5 head-to-head videos per week, and this whole process is gonna be taking 2 weeks, Monday to Friday always. So the 5 weekdays is gonna be full of head-to-heads, and on the weekend, you guys can decide which one of the 5 head-to-head winners of the weekdays was best, and we're going to be doing this weekend and next weekend, and then at the end of that we're going to have the best of the first week versus the best of the second week versus this car for the final conclusion. Okay, sound good? Anyway, this car with its 3.8 liter V8 has a 5-speed manual gearbox. It's got 2 15s all around because this body is limiting like that. You know, you can't flare the wheel or just very much at all in the rear. That's basically nothing. But even with that, we only get like 6.7% wheel spin, which is not too bad. We got sport tires, we got alloy rims, we got vented disc brakes. We got a fully clad under tray. We got luxury interior and entertainment as also required, of course. And we got standard springs with gas monotube 10% passive sway bars. Overall resulting in almost 50 drivability with a 40.2 sportiness, 45.6 comfort, 47.8 prestige, 43.3 safety. And it costs $34,950, so that's $50 under the price limit that I set, so it barely makes it. But the performance of this thing is pretty damn good. It's a 14-15 quarter-mile time. That's pretty quick for 250 horsepower. Let's see what this does around the automation track. Although Actually, no, let's not, because these cars aren't made for lap times. Like, yeah, these cars aren't made for lap times. But at least if you spend what most people would consider in the 80s, remember, a pretty high amount of money on a car, you would at least expect it to be quicker than your you know, made Golf GTI or something, which this definitely would be. But that is why quarter mile times sort of matter. All right, so now let's get into the actual first head-to-head, and it's gonna be the BGTC Beluga by Fox. Oh, this looks, it kind of looks 90s, but it does look pretty good. I like it in black. Yeah, looks pretty damn good. Looks sort of Mercedes-esque, but I like that. Fast Mercedes at that, because with the lip and the bonnet hump and whatnot, and the pretty wide arches, I like that. Right, so in this car we have a corrosion-resistant steel monocoque and partial aluminum panels. It's rear-wheel drive. It's a 5-speed manual gearbox as well, and it's got double wishbones all around, and it's got a 4-liter naturally aspirated inline 6 with 249 horsepower. Let's take a look at that engine. So 250 pound-feet of torque is, I think, 4 more than the 3.8-liter V8 in the reference car, but you know, even then it doesn't really matter, because my reference car isn't competing, of course. Aluminium all around. It's got 4 valves per cylinder as well. It's got a forged steel crank, I-beam steel conrods, forged pistons. We've got a cam profile of 40, naturally aspirated. It's got a single configuration with a performance intake. Throttle response is at 32.3, which is reasonable but not exceptional. +8 quality into the fuel section, that's quite a lot, but that does give you a good benefit, because you can afford to run higher or more advanced ignition timing, higher compression and whatnot. It's running a pretty big exhaust diameter. You could go a little bit lower and make a little bit more torque. Then again, this one's apparently supposed to be loud, so sure. Nice engine. We've seen that this thing has a 5-speed manual. We got just a little bit of overdrive in 5th gear. We got the geared limited slip diff. We got 225s all around on 17-inch alloy rims and medium compound road tires. We got vented discs all around with really comfortable pad type apparently. And 3 25s up front, 2 85s on the rear. So these are really big brakes for 1989. No under tray. A very slight wing angle of 15 front and rear. And we got more than enough cooling, much more than actually required. So you could go down on that a little bit. That would help top speed and therefore prestige. It would also help fuel economy. I think you could reduce that by a bit and make things better overall. Luxury interior and entertainment as necessary, and then all driver assists actually and advanced safety. We got standard springs with adaptive dampers and +5 quality into the suspension section. We've seen a lot of quality points throughout the various sections, but one in particular interests me because I find it to be quite effective, and it's this one. Yeah, look, he does have +5 quality in the chassis section as well, and this actually does give you a pretty significant benefit because it benefits like everything. Yeah, it makes the car heavier, but the better chassis helps drivability, sportiness, comfort, and prestige, and safety. Like, it helps all the main stats at the cost of cost. Yeah, so that's that. So this thing does a 59.1 competitiveness in the GT section, which isn't all that good, even with all the great stats that it has. But what it's lacking apparently is prestige, 40.8. That's a little bit lower than yeah, that's quite a bit lower than what we've seen on the reference car, which scored like a 78 point something on the GT category. So that does make a pretty significant difference, that prestige. Top speed is also lower, 231.9 here versus 249 point something on the reference car. So let's see what this does on the quarter mile. Sweet inline 6 sound, 14.4. Okay, that's a decent time. And this will be going. Oh, also it costs how much? Oh, 34,950. So right on the edge, like the reference car. And this would be going up against the Keika Chase by Boost and Ethanol. Oh look, it's sort of like a Mustang. Right. On this car we have a steel monocoque chassis and partial aluminum panels, so same as on the previous car. And we will have a 5-speed manual as well. The wishbones are around. So far so similar. We have a 2.6 liter twin turbo V6 though, and that's new. So let's take a look at that engine. Alright, so it is a 2.6 liter 5 valve per cylinder aluminium V6, excuse me, V6, and it is twin turbocharged, and the internals are actually all cast, so they're pretty cheap. And this is not really what you'd expect on a budget GT car. I know it's a budget GT car, but still, if you're like I said, these cars are going to be competing versus like the Nissan 300ZX, Porsche 924, Maserati bi-turbo, and if you're in that sort of if you're competing against cars like those, cast internals, really? We get a 53 cam profile, we got no VVT. Actually, I didn't know that VVT was already available in 89, but doesn't matter now, this doesn't have it anyway. We got a journal bearing. Oh god, why doesn't it have a ball bearing? That's so much better, look at that. Yeah, journal bearing it is. 0.77 AR ratio, 0.74 bars of boost. Premium fuel, 14.6 fuel mixture, 7,000 RPM rev limit, and multi-point injection with a single configuration and standard intake. This does of course not have the same kind of throttle response that the naturally aspirated inline 6 had that we just saw, but that's to be expected because this is a turbo engine. And then we have a dual exhaust setup with a 2-inch pipe, high flow three-way cat, and 2 reverse mufflers, making 230 horsepower, 226 pound-feet of torque. I don't like this turbo setup though. Like the turbo only comes in at 3,800 RPM, which is old school. It's 80s-esque, sure, but then again, when you have a turbo engine that kicks in at pretty high RPM, you would expect tons of boost, which this isn't making. So yeah, it's not the most refined turbo engine. Then again, to give him a sort of, you know, the benefit of the doubt, with V6s, it's much harder to set up a proper turbos setup in this game than it is with inline sixes, just because you have 2 cylinder banks of 3 cylinders each for each turbo, whereas with the straight six you only have 1 turbo, and therefore the 1 turbo that it has only has to be can be spooled up by all 6 cylinders, whereas with a V6 you only have 3 cylinder providing the exhaust airflow for each turbo. I hope that makes sense, but in the end this means that on the straight sixes the turbo will spool up considerably earlier than on the V6. So 5-speed manual, viscous limited slip diff. We got 235s all around on sport tires on 18-inch alloy rims. Now 18-inch rims for 1989, that's supercar stuff. That's you know, exotics stuff. 18-inch rims, you didn't get those in the late 80s on your somewhat regular car. This also has huge front brakes, 365s. Again, not very error correct. We get some front wing angle here. Actually, does this even have a front lip? No, it doesn't, so I didn't touch that. But we do have 15 wing angle on the rear, where we do have this nice little boot lid and some cooling airflow, some brake airflow as well. Luxury interior and entertainment, all driver assets including traction control, and then advanced 80s safety. We also have air suspension, which is kind of fancy, but it works, of course. And then we have adaptive dampers and plus free quality in the suspension system. So overall, how does this do in the GT segment? 59.0, so that's 0.1 less than the GT and then the BGTC Beluga, I think it was. So it doesn't do much worse in the GT category, but I think that overall this is just, you know, the engine is holding it back, not because it's making less power, but because of the fact that this doesn't have very much torque at all before like 3000 RPM. Like, look at that, at 3000 RPM you have 150 pound-feet, that's nothing. And performance-wise, let's see what this does. $14.49, so that's, I'm gonna round that up to 14.5. You can see though that this car takes longer to get off the line. So that's, I think, the 60 feet or however many feet basically the launch is on a quarter mile, and then once it's launched though, it pulls a little bit harder than the other car, but not enough to catch up. So how do these two cars compare? I think that the engine in the BGTC Beluga is definitely more potent. Oh yeah, one thing I also didn't look at is running costs. 10.8 liters of economy, running costs 31.54. $12.18 liters per 100 kilometers, 34.07. So, excuse me. This might be roughly $4,000 cheaper to buy, but for one, it's not as, like, the engine isn't quite as potent and for two, it's more expensive to run too. Like $250 per year. That's actually not an insignificant amount. $250 every year, and let's say you own it for 10 years. That's over $2,500. Like that's $2,500. That this is more expensive to run than the BGTC Beluga. Then again, the Beluga that cost like $4,000 more to buy, but still. And overall, I also don't think that this car fits the era as well as the Beluga did, with its 18-inch rims and like 365mm front brakes. I give this point to the BGTC Beluga. So in my opinion, it wins this head-to-head. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you with the next episode tomorrow. Goodbye.